rest of the people arrive, please tell them that I was here since 9:30, okay?
We understand everything.
First one you can
I am collecting mics today. I don't need to share them.
You have also all the water.
Oh yes, that is why I volunteer for this kind of things, because of the free water. If they were giving away beer, there will be more volunteers.
Later that day.
That is a good idea. Hello. There is an awful lot of you.
I know we love you, but
Yes,
you are
I am becoming terrified. I'm also developing a bit of a stage panic. Okay, no, it is, Tim Minchin, when he looks wildly, they are surrounding me. Day 3, I think they have spotted me. I no longer can be mistaken by one of them. I don't know who had the idea of programming this kind of panels on a Saturday at 10 in the morning, but I think you are all very brave.
It's not Sunday yet.
Could be worse, could be worse.
Also, they live closer. Most of the people.
Oh yes, so I can say that I am arriving late because I live in Spain. Well, that is...
But you are staying at the other part of the town.
Yes, it is. Well, every time I come here, I get a beautiful sightseeing of the city.
Maybe that was the idea.
Yes, I am becoming very careful very quickly. I'm becoming a native.
Yeah, the fans are living mostly much closer to you.
Anybody is living closer than me. Some people in other countries are living closer than me.
You know, there are some local people who have to travel around 2 hours to get here.
My God.
Yeah.
Why did they leave yesterday night? They could have slept here. But anyway, the trams are very nice here, and they have established a route of the tram through all the Pokestops and gyms. So I am deeply grateful. I have got, okay, I will show you, but some of them are pretty rare. So I'm happy about that. Also, it would be wonderful, because I would have all the mics for me if we were speaking about translation, because that is my issue. But we are speaking about a subject that it is creating worlds of fantasy, isn't it? Is that subject? Well, I am a translator. I am not supposed to create worlds of fantasy. In fact, if I decide suddenly, hey, I have this novel to translate, I'm going to create a world of fantasy, they will fire me immediately.
Well, it is better than the one you translate.
You know, that is usually a problem with translators. They are... any translators in the room?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Well, some translators, not you or me, of course, are in fact frustrated writers. And they think, here we have this novel by this semi-unknown guy, also the Scott Card, Peterem V.Brettem, George Martin. I think I will improve his words. I think I will improve it a little because, I know how to do that. The guy doesn't know how to. And that is the problem. I remember once in a panel, I was in the audience. I was a very young translator. It was long ago, when dinosaurs still roamed the earth. And the guy the translator in the panel said something like, somebody asked him, hey, do you improve the novels you write? And in my mind I was answering, of course not, I am not the one who should improve the novel. That is a word for the writer and the publisher and the editor. And the guy answered, "Oh yes, I often do that." I said, "Oh." And do your readers know that? Because they will not be happy. You know.
You know, Cristina, but in Polish, Czech, and we have one writer who is much more popular in Czech Republic, though he was writing in Polish. Because the problem wasn't with his words or with his action or anything like that. The problem was with his writing. And the translator who corrected it, translated it into Czech.
That happens.
Made it much book of it.
I have to say that happens in Spanish too. But you know, it is when Julio Cortázar or Jorge Luis Borges did translations. The problem is when John Smith makes a translation and improves it, because for every writer whose work has been seriously improved by a translator, there is 100 of them who have been seriously destroyed by a translator. I can tell you about several famous writers in Spain, in England or in America, who are almost unknown in Spain. Why? Because they were not lucky. Hello, hello. I have been here since 9:30, you remember?
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for coming.
Sorry.
Running out of
There was a
stupid
broken
things to
car
say.
on the bridge, and so we were stuck in traffic.
His excuse is better than mine.
Weren't there supposed to be 3 of us?
I was wondering exactly that.
Sorry to leave you alone for so long.
Well, it looked longer. It seemed longer than it was. It felt longer. Now he's correcting me.
Oh, I'm only 10 minutes late. Okay. Sorry, everyone. I ran. Who's in charge here? Are you in charge? I am?
I think the last one arriving is in charge. We have just invented that rule.
What should we talk about?
I think we were creating worlds of fantasy. For example, in yours, there was a broken car in a bridge.
Yeah. Every other day that we drove from the hotel to here, it took 10 minutes at the most. Today it took half an hour, so I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to keep everyone waiting. I don't know, is there a moderator? Are we waiting for the moderator?
Yes, our friend the moderator. Okay. No, we don't need a moderator.
Do we want to take some questions? You want to just talk? What should we do?
Okay. Question.
Is that microphone to the public?
Okay. Who is willing to come here and get it?
I'll do it.
No, come on.
It's okay.
Let people work a
I'm
bit.
like the announcer.
Okay, we can stand up.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah,
has a question.
please.
Let's start it.
Okay.
You can just volunteer to ask a question.
I have a question. When you're writing a novel, do you consider, even for a moment, that it may be translated at some point? And whether this may affect in any way the way you prepare, the way you work, the way you create names and wordplay?
In other words, would you make us a hold the door thing?
Do you want to answer first, or should I go?
I'm not a writer, so I think it should be for
Okay,
you.
so I absolutely do consider that things are translated. I thank my translators in the front of every book. I incredibly respect the work they do. I could never do that work. And I always make a point of, whenever I can, getting in touch with my translators and letting them know how important they are to me, and letting them know that if they have questions that they should contact me directly. And every time I get an email from a translator, I drop everything and write right back to them and say, "You're important. Please." Because my work is only as good as the translation, and so it has to be good. And I don't want them to have questions and not get the answers from me. That being said, I don't speak every language, and every language has different nuances, and so it's impossible to consider all of those things. I know that in Polish you change names depending on different circumstances, and that's something that I didn't even know about until last night, so I certainly have done something to consider that when I name characters or do wordplay, but I'm always trying to write the best book that I can in my language. And then it's my job to help the translator translate it into their language. And sometimes that means that something that was funny in English is not going to be funny in German, and something that's, a pun that hinges on a word meaning two things isn't going to work in every language, but sometimes you can come up with something else that's just as good in whatever language you're translating into. So I try to be as helpful as possible. I'm very aware that my work is translated into 26 different languages, so I try to be as accessible as possible about it, but there's only so much you can do. I don't know any puns in Japanese, so I have to just trust that the translator will handle that.
As the translator part, okay, sometimes as you say you cannot translate that part, but you always, I at least always try to avoid that horrible thing known as a note from the translator. Note from the translator means, for example, in a Terry Pratchett book, or when a pun is involved, a note of the translator's note means, up there was a joke and you don't got it, you didn't get it. I got it because I was clever and I studied English, but you didn't. So that is a translator note. Maybe you cannot say that pun, but you can. Okay, the most important thing is what the author tried to say. Not exactly how he said it, not the exact words, not the exact moment he put the pun, but if he wanted to make you smile in that paragraph, the translator should make you smile in that paragraph. I don't know if that makes any sense or answers your question.
Yeah, I certainly think we should avoid footnotes that say this is funny in English.
No, wait a minute. This translator I was telling you about, you missed that part. This translator I was telling you about, the one who seriously improved the works from those foreigners. Once, one of his notes said, literally, I'm not going to invent anything, said, that was a not very fortunate joke by the author. Really, he said that is pretty bad. It really means that, but he could have done better.
So sometimes the translators badmouth the author in the book?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
I was telling sometimes the translators are creative. More than creative than they should be. There is a very, very thin line. If you cross the other side, you are invading that.
Yeah.
Okay, this is becoming very quickly a panel about translators.
Well, it's an important topic, but does anyone else have a question?
Well, when we're talking about languages, I have a question about creation. How deep do you delve into creating this language, and do you get any help from linguistic people or in the books?
So in the creation language, I develop exactly as much as I need to say whatever it is that I have to say. So I can't hold a conversation in creation. I have worked very hard to use grammar and sentence structure in such a way that it's consistent whenever I write a sentence. But I kind of just make the words up as I need them, because if I spent all my time creating a language, I wouldn't be writing my books. Tolkien, who's the most famous person for doing this, was a linguist. That was his nerd, and so my nerd is martial arts, and so it's a little different. So I'm very careful to be consistent, to focus on words that I think are important culturally for these people, and but I don't have more of a language than we've already seen, and I sort of make it up as I need it, which is, I think, what most authors do, unless they get to, like George Martin had made up just enough Dothraki to write the sentences that he needed to write, and then when they hired, you know, a language expert for the show, then they created a whole language. So hopefully, I'll have that problem someday.
There is somebody
Yeah.
behind there. Next time.
I wanted to ask a question about creating the worlds, because the world in Demon Cycle is quite similar to ours, with the small difference about with the demons. But you could add more fantasy elements. And when do you draw the line? When it's too crowded, when the reader can identify with the world?
So, for me, I try to have as few fantasy elements as possible, especially when I started the series. So in the beginning of the book, demons were magic, and that was the only magic. So the ward magic that we use in the books siphons a little power from the demons and uses that to power the wards, and that was the only magic in the world. So there's no magic in the daytime, and only at night and only under certain circumstances is there magic. And everything else has to adhere to the rules of our real world. So even the medicine that Lisha uses, or some of the fighting techniques that the Crasians use, are all based in real world things. I think that when you are creating a fantasy world, you get more or less one because I said so. So, like, demons are magic because I said so. And then everything else has to be real and has to adhere to real rules, so that even though it's a fantasy world, we can relate to it in the same way that we relate to the world around us. I think that if you start having too many because I said so's, you get to a point where you take tension out of the story, because you can always swoop in with some new magic thing that gets your hero or heroine out of trouble too easily. I feel like your hero always has to earn their way out, and so I don't like to reveal something that the reader didn't know to solve a problem. I like the reader to know how the world works, and then have to have the characters be creative to solve the problems. But of course, as the series has gone on, you find different ways to apply your one because I said so. And so now, in the first book, there was very little magic at all. And now, by book 5, people are throwing lightning bolts at each other. But you understand, because it's happened, it's evolved slowly over the course of several books. So I've built a foundation. With each book, there's a little bit more magic, because characters are finding different ways to apply that one because I said so in the beginning of the first book. I think that's something that you have to be very careful about. You don't want to have too many fantasy elements mucking up your story. Your story has to be based in the real world, and just have a couple of fantasy elements that enhance it.
Everybody knows the story of George Martin and the anchovies in the pizza? Well, he always says exactly that, what he said, that when he was in university, college, they ordered a pizza, the pizza had one anchovy. It was the most delicious thing he had ever tried. And then the next time he ordered a pizza full of anchovies. That was inedible. So he says magic in a story is like the anchovies in a pizza. A little bit makes it all the better. A pizza full of anchovies and a story full of magic, nobody can eat that. There is somebody who wants that microphone which you are sharing. No, he's going to ask first. He can. Okay.
So you can go. Or is it related to what we were just saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind to give her for a second, and then she will return it?
I just wanted to drag this problem a little bit longer. Do you consider the scientific results of your magic? For example, this is something I loved deeply in Brandon Sanderson's book, when he has magic, and at certain point, certain person asks a magician a question which is in its scientific level. The question: if you are making yourself heavier, are you increasing the gravity, how the gravity affects you, or are you increasing your inertia? Well, she is, of course, asking completely different because he wouldn't understand these ideas. But are you considering it on that level?
Yes, absolutely I do. I think of magic in my stories as electricity, or any other kind of power source. And so the wards shape that power source into different things. And you know more or less what the wards can do. And theoretically, it's capable of anything, because if you draw a complex enough ward net and power it, you could have it make you a ham sandwich, or, you know. But it would be so complicated to do that it would be easier to raise a pig and slaughter it and cook it and make your own ham sandwich than it would be to do it with magic. But I absolutely do consider how the magical effect affects the real world, and that's why I don't have characters that are doing really outlandish things. Like, you can throw energy at something, you can turn you know, the ground into mud, you know, you can do things like when Arlen flies in book 3, it's because he can move the molecules of his body apart in order to turn into mist, so that when he mists places, he's basically just moving the molecules of his body further apart so that he becomes a vapor instead of a solid. And so when he flies, he moves them just apart just a little bit to shed some weight, and then uses the energy to push himself into the air. And so I do consider all of these things, and try to apply them anytime I use magic, so that we don't have effects that don't make scientific sense. You know, but at the same time, like, it's magic, so like there is a little "I said so" in there somewhere. But I do try to be careful to apply it in a way that makes sense to the world, because I don't want the reader to feel like I came out of nowhere with a solution to something.
Okay, so now question about demon alphabet. Do you know how to make, you know, rune cycle that keeps demons out of the way? You know, with all of these rules that was in Painted Man Part 2, and all of this stuff.
So, do I know how to make a ward circle? Like
that works.
That works?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that works in Phantasm, not here.
Look, I've never had a demon invade my house, so obviously I'm doing something right. We actually, I have an artist that I worked with who made all of the ward symbols, and we worked together to have create the symbols for the different kinds of demons and see how they would work together in a circle. And there's various examples of it, because it can work in a lot of different ways. So you can all, I'm going to really nerd out a little bit on ward magic here, so I hope that doesn't bother people. The power of each ward is dependent on certain things. How big the symbol is, how much power it's drawing, either from the magic that's wafting up from the core on the surface, or the power of a demon that's trying to get through it, and they're keyed into different demons. So basically, you could just draw, you know, if there was a rock demon coming at you and you just put a circle of rock demon wards, you would be safe. If there is a rock demon and a wood demon, you would have to have both of those. If you want a circle of protection that protects you from every kind of demon, you would have to include all of those, and you would have to link them together so that that protection goes all the way around. Or you would have to put the same ward over and over, because they have overlapping power. But if you link them together, then it becomes a circuit, and that power is distributed evenly all the way around. So again, there's a little science in it. If you break the circuit, then if you cause a break in the circuit here, then you could not be protected on the other side, because it's no longer distributed and you only have the one ward over there. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? So, and this happens in the books. There are times when, you know, in the first book, when Arlen draws the circle against one arm, and then he slips and scratches one, and suddenly the circle doesn't work anymore, and he has to fix it. that's because he made a sloppy circle, you know, and so you learn the next time to make 2 circles so that if you mess up one, the other one is still active. So I have different designs of word circles that work. Some of them we made coins, the wooden coins that they have in Hollow County. We're making them right now. We haven't quite finished designing them, but they will have a circle on them, and the purpose of that was so that everyone in Hollow County, while they're spending their money, also has an example of a working circle that they could just copy, so that no one would ever be trapped without knowing how to word a circle again. So that's something that I've worked into the story, so that characters who otherwise don't know how to word can have that ability, and so that fans who want to have a word circle tattoo or want to like enter one of my wording contests or something know what they're doing and can do it properly. If you also go to my website or my Facebook page, I have a list of all the wards and what they do and how they work together. So it's something that I've given a lot of fun to.
Do you have any words for deadline people?
Please, pass the microphone back there.
We'll get you next.
Oh, sorry,
Promise.
sorry.
Or is that closer?
Yes, that is closer
Yeah.
than you.
We'll get you next.
Sorry.
Okay, so as it's about creating in the new worlds, what is your favorite part when creating the new world? Your favorite element?
In creating a new world? I mean, I guess it's the one, because I said so, that affects everything else. So I think that that's the foundation that you build off of, that one special thing about your world that's different from everyone else's. And if you create something that's, I think that I did something that now I can build on and build on and build on forever. But it depends. There's different authors that, like, some authors like to just keep creating different worlds and different worlds and different worlds. Brandon Sanderson is a great example of that. You know, every book has a different magic system in a different world, and that's based on, you know, the idea of, you know, Brandon told me that he bases that on the idea of God's infinite worlds, where God went on to create, after creating Earth, kept creating other planets that were just like Earth, except a little bit different. And so he really enjoys that concept of creating all these different worlds. I personally am much more interested in the characters and much more interested in people and their personal interactions and things. And so the world is a playground for me to put characters on. I enjoy the world building, but I don't know that that's what I'm in it for, if you know what I mean. But I think that you really need to, when you're creating a new world and you think about what's the one thing that's going to be different about this world, you have to really take your time and sort of think it through before you jump into it. Because sometimes the powers that you create can have unexpected consequences. And if you don't think it through, you'll get somebody who'll say to you, like, why didn't Frodo just fly the eagles right to the mountain? You know? It would have been a great plan.
There was somebody there first. Who was? Yes. Then you,
We'll get to
okay?
you too.
Well, my question is, in Demon Cycle, you mix elements of different world-building kinds and different genres. We have the primary element of fantasy, but there are also elements of post-apocalypse. There is, especially in the world, made this element of becoming such a superhero. This essentially, I'm asking, how do you decide how to mix these elements in what proportions to different genres?
It's true, I do think that in my books I mix a lot of different genres. And I think that it's all just based on the stuff that I love myself. I love superhero comics, I love martial arts, I love horror novels, I love fantasy novels, and so I took the elements that I enjoy from all of those things and worked them all into my story. So there's a lot of horror elements in my story, there's a lot of fantasy elements, there's a lot of like really detailed martial arts scenes, and in some ways Arlen is a superhero, and that's because I love superheroes. And so but I don't know that I sat down and you know, made a chart of how to combine those things. I just sort of was incorporating elements of things that I love personally into my books, and it's worked out the way it has. And I think that it's made them something that's, I don't want to say unique, because there's other authors that do similar things, but we all absorb the things that we love in the world, and then, you know, like a sponge, and then squeeze that back out into our own work. It sounds kind of gross when I say it. My work is dirty sponge water, is what I'm saying.
That's sort of horrible.
I have more of a translation question.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. Because sometimes writers are, when they are creating the world, they are changing the names of the everyday objects so they are more suitable for the world that they created. How the translators manage to translate them to their language? Because for example, in English, the particular word can have some sort of a meaning that you can figure out what is it, but for example, translating in Polish, it loses it. So how the translation
But you have to go case by case, obviously. First thing, the most important part is you get to know what the author really wanted, because sometimes you can miss it. That is, if you miss it, you are lost, and your readers are lost. But if you get it, then you have to choose what is the most important part, if the sound of the word or something that relates to it. For example, okay, excuse me if I put too many examples by Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin, but it's what I'm translating now. It is the Valerian fire. You know, Valerian fire is that the green stuff, the alchemist stuff, and the translation into Spanish is Greek fire. Obviously, I cannot have Greeks in Westeros. So, not Valerian fire, no, sorry. What was the
Wildfire.
Wildfire, thank you. Wildfire, that I haven't told the joke before. What I did was translated it by Valerian fire. It is the only way to do it. They have also a game that reflects chess. I have to look for instead of the Arabic word, something different. The important part for the translator is to get the author was making a pun or something, or a gameplay there. If you don't get it, you are dead. And no stress. That's a bit of a stress to my daily routine.
Does anyone here is a writer or wants to be a writer?
So
Okay.
this is a science fiction convention. Half of them will want to be
I
writers.
know. I knew the answer. It was a gimme answer.
Okay, I
So-
have a very quick question.
Wait, I was still answering that one. No, it's okay. So, George Martin and some other fantasy authors from his generation wrote a thing called the Turkey City Lexicon. If you haven't heard of this, read it. Like, go online, just Google Turkey City Lexicon, it'll come right up. And it's a file of all of the common things in science fiction and fantasy stories that they think are totally annoying and bad and that you should never do. And one of those rules, it's a list of rules, one of those rules is called never call a rabbit a smurp. A smurp, which is just a made up word. And what it means is, if you're writing about an alien world, or you're writing about, you're trying to write a fantasy story, don't take a real world thing and give it a fake name that is not what it is. If it's a rabbit, call it a rabbit. If it's something else, call it something else. But don't make up a name for rabbits in your world, because it just confuses everyone. And I think that that's a really good rule to live by. If you're going to make up a new word, there needs to be a reason why you made up that new word. You shouldn't just make up a new word to try and make something fantasy that's a normal thing. I change the spelling of some of people's names in my books, but I do it because the demons burned all the libraries and nobody knows how to spell anymore. And so they simplify the spelling of words to make it as few letters as possible to make the sound that's necessary to make the name. And so that was a very intentional change that I made. But that was something that I had a reason for it, and I thought it through, and I tried to make it as simple as possible, rather than just trying to add fantasy elements to places that don't need them to make the book seem more different. So again, Turkey City Lexicon, if you want to be a writer, you should absolutely read it.
And another thing is when your characters, that is a request please for all writers, when your characters are traveling for a road and they see different trees, and they see 6 different trees, 5 of them have recognizable names in English or in your language, and the 6th one is not. You cannot identify it immediately, but as the first 5 were real trees, say, oh, it is my lack of understanding. I will spend a complete day looking in botanical encyclopedias, falling to gardens in foreign countries, in order to find out which tree is that one and how can I translate it. And at the end of the day, you discover that he invented that last tree, the bastard. No, really. But remember one little thing, please. We translators get paid by the word, so that word that took me all the day was 2 cents. So that day my daughter did not have dinner. And just because of you. Enough said.
That's why they just email the author and ask them, and they should answer you right away.
I understand many writers are ready and are available to answer questions, but I really try to use that as the last possible card. I remember, I was telling the other day an anecdote. A friend of mine is a comic book drawer, artist, and okay, it was in the 90s, so there was still no usually email. And the guy showed me a letter he had received from his French translator. We were speaking about a comic book artist and scriptwriter. He had, so it was 40 pages. It was 17 pages of damn questions. The French translator sent him basically every single 20 questions per page. So say, okay, why doesn't he get a dictionary, for example? It will be quicker. So sometimes I think we translators use a bit too much the email the author.
I mean, personally, what I would like for every translator to do is when they're about to start translating the book, send me a message and say, hi, I'm your translator, I'm about to start translating your book, is it alright if I ask you questions if I have any? And establish that connection right away. And then, because then you'll know, if they write right back to you and say, oh please get in touch with me whenever you have a question, then you know if they're available. And if they don't write back to you at all, then the hell with them, you know?
Okay, I will be sure to send you a...
But that's what I would like to see.
I can imagine if every translator in the world sent George Martin an email, hello, about your 1,200 pages novel, I have a few questions for you.
Well, George Martin has assistants to handle that, so you should still get a response right away. I mean, even I have an assistant to help with that sort of thing, but there's so many translations of my work where I didn't even know that they had started translating it, I don't know who the translator is, and it comes out in the stores, and I just have to hope that they got it right, and hope that if they had a question that they figured out an answer to it.
I can tell you they were pretty good in Spain.
Well, that's good.
No, they would have it much better.
Martina, you had a question?
Okay, mine is really quick. Here, sorry.
No, that's right.
So how did you solve the hold the door problem in your language?
It has not happened yet. we are all wishing that George Martin finds say, that I was cheating the TV series. It is not going to happen in the books. Really, I'm praying for that because there is no way out of that.
Okay, I have a question for you. When you're building a world, do you create a small piece and then zoom out step by step, or do you create a whole world and then zoom in to the continent, to the country, to the city, to the person?
I mean, I'm not God.
Well, in a way, every writer, he's creating a world he is.
You know, that is why they want to be writers. They get these ideas.
I mean, I have a sense of the larger world So there's a map in my books that covers a relatively small area. And I have a sense that, there are other continents, and some of them I know about, and some of them I haven't really given a lot of thought to. And I have a sense of what's on the other side of the, like the edges of the map. I have like an idea of it, but you start out with the place where your story is. You start out in that smaller area, and then the map gets bigger as you have a reason to go to different places. So when I started writing Demon Cycle, I created the little village of Timmonsbrook, and they had a demon problem. And there was one little boy who wasn't happy with the way they handled that problem, and was very frustrated with the fact that he could never go more than half a day from home because he had to be back by night. And he was always wondering what was over that next hill, what's on the other side of that hill that I can't get to. And that, I think, was where that story started, and for years that's all there was. It was that little short story, and I kept wondering what's over that hill too. And so when Arlen started making that journey, I made that journey with him, and we sort of built the map together. Like have you ever played a video game where the map is dark until you step somewhere? It's kind of like that when you're writing.
Have you ever created a world where what scared you so much that you stopped writing, for example, 1 week or so, and then you read what you wrote and oh my god, it's so cruel.
I haven't created a world like that. I've certainly written things like that. There are parts of the Desert Spear that are really dark, that I had a plan to write them, and while I was writing them I was miserable and upset, and particularly some of the stuff with Rana Tanner, just while I was writing it, I would get upset, and I was a miserable person to be around, and I think that I don't think I've ever gotten that dark again, because it was just troubling to write. But the beauty of being the world builder is that you're always safe. You control what happens. You can make it happy and safe, or you can make it scary and dangerous. And so I've never been so scared of my own work, but there are definitely times when I've come up with story elements, usually involving people, not the world, that haunt even me. But I guess that's what I want. I want to feel something. I want to make myself feel something and then make you feel it. That's what a writer does. So, I hope that answers it.
I want to go slightly back to the question that already was, because you were telling us not to call the rabbit a smear, but there are sometimes, I remember now one book you probably don't know because it's a Russian one translated in Polish many years ago, which is science fiction, not fantasy. But for example, the people who were there, they had names that were mushrooms, I don't know, spiders or something. And we realized pretty quickly in the story that they do not definitely behave like those which are in our world. For example, mushrooms could escape from the bag if they weren't tied up enough. So, do you are sometimes doing like that? Because people will call something a mushroom if it can be eaten, dried, or something. So, do you do the opposite of calling rabbit a smear sometimes?
I think it's a bad idea to do something like that, because it just confuses the reader. When you read that, did you enjoy that, or were you confused by it?
Yes.
It wasn't a yes or no question.
Okay, a question with regard to both world building and a bit of translating. Does it happen? The question was about creating a world which is so scary you don't want to take part in it. Maybe question for Cristina. Have you ever encountered a story you had to translate which was compulsing, revolting, which induced strong feelings in you. You had problems with it.
I used to translate a lot of crime fiction, and I remember parts that were so, a specific author that was so gory that certain things I would give him to my previous partner to translate them because I could not deal with them. No, really, it was. I am very realistic. I get a very vivid image of what is happening, and certain things I could. Yeah, okay, sorry, I could not deal with. I can have battles. I can chop your head anytime you want, but certain torture scenes, for example, well, it is. I really prefer not to deal with them.
I have a question.
Sorry.
I have a question. Do you have any imaginary world that you read about that you were actually amazed about? That you read about the world, the construction of the world, and you thought, wow, that is awesome. That was. Do you have any thought about any world that you ever read?
Yes, lots of them. Let me pick one because there's so many. I don't think that this book is translated into Polish. There's a series by author Celia Friedman, C.S. Friedman, called the Cold Fire series.
Yes.
Is that in Polish?
Yes.
It's wonderful books, wonderful books.
The English version is much better, but that one has a decent translation.
Yeah. So I highly recommend those. That was a world that was incredibly inspiring to me. Celia Friedman taught me a lot about writing. I've read all of her books and been greatly inspired by them. And so I think that's something that you can learn a lot from her because she clearly is incredibly smart, thinks all of her magic through to the end, and applies it in ways that you wouldn't consider. So that's absolutely worth looking into. I could list great fantasy stories all day, but we only have 10 minutes, they just said, so.
Can you tell me which ones had their hands?
Well, he's got the microphone up there, so let's...
To answer the question, also, you.
Okay. I will pay you a coffee later on. I really adore Terry Pratchett in that sense. Terry Pratchett is so crazy, so ironic, so close to this world and at the same time so far away. These are the kind of things that usually put me my heads up, and I deeply enjoy that.
I have two questions. First,
how many had you said?
I have two questions. Yeah. The first of all, do you have any, as I say, bad times in translations, or maybe hard times? Yeah.
Sorry, I did not understand exactly. Hard times, but I did hard times.
Hard times in translation?
Well, 7 in the morning is usually pretty bad time. Deadlines are a pretty bad time. Oh, come on. My job consists on getting up in the mornings and traveling to worlds fantastic, and spend my day reading novels I adore, having fun with it, and they pay me. No, I don't have a hard time, never ever translating. Sometimes when the deadline is too close and you have been enjoying a bit too much, and there has been too much Pokemon hunting in the way, but sometimes not really. You know, there is a dish chef in Spain, Ferran Adrià. He was, these three Michelin stars, everything. He was asked once, it's very, very hard, it's very stressing and hard for you to have 3 Michelin stars. And the guys answered, okay, getting up at 4 in the morning and go to excavating a mine, that is hard. My profession, no, that is not hard.
Okay, the second question is about the creating the fantasy worlds, yeah. it's when do you have when you create the work, yeah. What do you have to do it correctly, quite?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Dobrze. Dobrze. Chodziło mi, chcesz zrobić na przykład dobrze świat fantazji, żeby go dobrze zaprojektować, w ten sposób.
What do you do that your fantasy world project is good?
Practice. I mean, the thing that you have to remember is that ideas are a dime a dozen. I mean, I don't know how you translate that, but like, ideas are not what makes a story good. Characters are what makes a story good. And so, if your characters are involved in what's going on around them, if they resonate with the reader, that's what makes your story good. So you can have the best idea in the world. There are plenty of books that have a great world-building idea and are still bad books because you don't relate to the characters.
But the question was whether not how to make that story good, but how to make the word work. How to make it, I think, believable, how to make it, if I understand you.
Yeah,
yes?
So
To make the fantasy world to be much more like a living, breathing world like ours.
I think that you have to start with our world. You have to start with a world that's very similar to ours, and then be very careful about what you change, so that you have characters and cultures and places that are relatable. If you make your world too different, people can't relate to it, they can't understand it. You have to keep it grounded. And so the fantasy elements, as I was saying before, you get one fantasy element that you can put in, and then you have to see how that affects everything else in the world. So there are these books by my friend Naomi Novik wrote this series of books about dragons. The world is exactly as our world is, except there are dragons. And the dragons have been incorporated into the militaries of every country. And then she's sort of gone back in history and seen how that would affect things. And so she made one change, and then she extrapolated that change throughout the world and let that affect everything. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to take our world, or something very similar, make one change, and then think carefully about how that affects everything around it, and let that sort of ripple out.
I think we have time for our last question.
You had one?
I had the same question related to translation and the invented words for graphics and all that. If you encounter invented names in a book, or given names in a book, because for example the Harry Potter translator, the Harry Potter translators in various languages translated the names to fit them to the culture of the reader. Are you inclined to do that, or do you prefer to keep it the way the author preferred it?
Okay, I always say the same thing. If the language in the place where the novel happens is the official language is English, I will leave words in English. If it is not English, I will not leave a single word in English, because you cannot have in Westeros you cannot have people speaking half English. It has no sense. Makes no sense to me. That is some readers get angry with this choice of me. Really, they really prefer to keep the names of the characters, and the names of the places, and the names of the swords, and the names of the horses. Read the novel in English. You are choosing the wrong version of the novel. But for me it is very easy. If the background is an English-speaking world, be my guest, have it in English as much as you want. If it is not, it will become Spanish.
Harry Potter is also a special example because it happens in our world. And so when there's werewolves in Harry Potter, there is another word for werewolf in different languages. And so obviously you want to use the word that's appropriate to the culture that you're in. But if you're writing a world that's not our world, and the things that you're making up don't have their own word in different languages, you have to be selective about that. We've had a lot of trouble with my books with the word ward, because it means something very specifically in English that doesn't always translate. And so in some places they call them runes, some places call them glyphs, some places call them seals, and you have to sort of find the word that works, because in English it's a very recognizable word, and it doesn't translate well always. And so it's something that's why you want to work with your translator, to find the word that best fits whatever that language is.
And given names? Given names. For example, names of places. If they mean something else, for example, there's this writer Robin Hobb.
I know.
Her name, the names in her books mean things because they're made from adjectives.
Yeah. So I guess you would have to translate those.
You need to translate them. Why not? I mean, why are you going to keep them in English? Because if you keep in English, okay, you have to think your audience, your readers don't read English, because if they read English, they would be reading the original as they should. So if the name of the character has a meaning, and you are not translating it, you are stealing them of one part of the information.
Yeah. I think we're out of time, so thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate it. We need to get out of this room so the next thing can happen here. So I'm going to go out to the autographing area on the other side. If anybody wants books signed, if anybody wants to ask me questions or take pictures or hang out or whatever, I'll stay for as long as it takes to talk to everyone. But we do need to get out of this room now. So thank you so much for coming.
It will not work in vacuum.
Okay.
Because he's
Mają cię w tym. Mają cię w tym.